Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Colony Drop, a Gundam podcast. My name is Brian.
And my name is Isaac. This is your favorite Gundam podcast where we talk about everything from Gundam, manga, Gunpla, anime series, movies, OVAs, music, lore, ideas and concepts, anything and everything Gundam. Isn't that right, Brian?
That is right, Isaac. And you know, the one thing we haven't talked about is a Gundam comedy. And you know why that is? Because they don't exist, Isaac.
Do they, Brian? I mean, that might be debatable. Mobile Fighter G Gundam it's kind of a funny series. Definitely doesn't take itself too seriously. And the same about Mobile Fighters Tri Gundam.
Yeah, that's fair. So the topic today is Gundam comedies. Do we have any of those? Why haven't we seen one, maybe? And then if there was one, what would it look like? And maybe, do you want a Gundam comedy? So let's talk about what does exist, Isaac.
Yeah.
What are the series or the Gundam media that you think most closely resembles a comedy?
There's three that come to mind. The first on my list is SD Gundam.
Yeah.
Which is, for our listeners that don't know, it's SD stands for super deformed. They're these very chibi looking Gundams, so they have very massive heads, short blocky bodies, kind of going for like a super compact kind of cutesy animated style. The one series I saw really didn't take itself too seriously. It tried to be more of a sort of after school program, very similar to Power Rangers, really. There's been other SD Gundams in Japan that have been more loosely formatted, like some of the cast members would play games like Jeopardy or things like that. The other two series that are closer to comedy, or at least very lighthearted, are Mobile Fighter G Gundam. You know, when you have a Gundam called Tequila Gundam or Windmill Gundam, it's hard to be too serious. But to G Gundam's credit, there's some serious scenes and episodes where, you know, people legitimately die and things like that. There's also Build Fighters Tri Gundam. Build Fighters Tri.
Or just the whole Build Fighters universe, I guess. And Build Divers, probably.
Right, which is the most meta
Yeah.
meta self-commentary Gundam series ever, because it's about kids building Gundam models which then fight each other in like a holographic simulation. And they pull Gundam models from all different timelines and all different universes throughout Gundam's long-running history. Even though a lot of episodes can get really competitive and focused on the tournament and all that, for the most part, it's really lighthearted. There's like an act guy that looks like a bear, and he's stuffed with cotton, so that influences how physical attacks are done on him and how much they bounce back. Things like that. It's a very lighthearted show that doesn't take itself too seriously, and can be really fun for someone that had watched Gundam for a long time. It really rewards your viewing length. But outside of those three, which are not exactly comedies, but definitely more lighthearted, there really isn't a Gundam comedy per se, Brian. Can you think of anything else that I missed on my list?
So I thought of 5 things, 3 of which are the 3 that you mentioned. So like on SD Gundam, the one we watched as Americans was SD Gundam Force, which was, like you said, very much after school and kind of a comedy to us, right? I mean, the Zakos were funny.
Yeah, they were the only funny thing in it. Because like even what was it, Commander Haro?
Yeah,
his giant Haro head was, I don't know, it was disconcerting.
It was, yes, I was a little worried about him. But like the older ones, like you said, those I definitely think were much more of a comedy. I would say more of like in a mocking, not mocking, but like, you know, lighthearted meta way.
Right.
I haven't checked on those to see if there's any new subs out of those in probably like 15 years. I should probably go check on that.
I mean, we've had other priorities.
Yeah, I'm sure someone has subbed them, though, in the last 15 years since I've checked. So the old SD Gundams, I agree, probably the closest thing we have to a true Gundam comedy. Build Fighters, I would agree, in terms of like a full-fledged, full series, probably has the most comedy elements out of all of them. But it's still, at most, I would label it like a dramedy or whatever.
Okay.
The tournament still takes like center stage, I would say. Gets, you know, particularly serious probably at the end. They do have a lot of funny running gags in that show. But I wouldn't say that it's a comedy in of itself.
No.
And G Gundam, yeah, Tequila Gundam was immediately what I thought of, or things like Mermaid Gundam, or that one from the manga side story for G Gundam. There's the Kangaroo Gundam.
Oh,
I think it was called Jumping Gundam, I think. So there's definitely some comedy aspects there, just based on the nature of the show, right? But G Gundam, I mean, it's still at its heart a drama. I mean, you got a guy looking for his brother. The G Gundam world, as we've talked about before, is horribly messed up from the war. So
yeah,
it doesn't really have like a comedy background. The other two I thought of are maybe not as official as the other three, but so sometimes, and I can't think of any specific ones, but sometimes either manga artists or maybe some of the anime artists, they will draw these things called like 4-comas, or I'm not actually even sure if I'm saying that right, but they're basically 4-panel like manga strips, and it's usually about the characters, you know, something funny happens to them, and it's very much like non-canon. So those are like pure comedy, but that's not in a series or anything. It's not even really official. It's just kind of like the artists or whatever having fun. And they'll do that for any anime, not just Gundam. I mean, that's just a common thing in manga. I did notice though, Isaac, that in some of the side stories we've read, like F90 and Silhouette Formula F91, there's a little more comedy in those than there probably would be in a TV show. Like, remember that one scene where they threw that girl a surprise birthday party and she didn't want him to be there, and she told him to go away.
Yes, that was when we learned that there actually were birthday parties in the Universal Century, and it's a tradition in their culture to someone wear a top hat.
Yes, the top hat, exactly.
The top hat that came out of nowhere that's on a military ship.
Every piece of cargo is valuable on those ships.
Rations, ammunition, uniforms, birthday kit. All right, we're ready to ship out.
Got my top hat. Don't worry. We're set here. But yeah, I can't think of really one either beyond those. So why do you think that is, Isaac? Why do you think we haven't seen a full-fledged Gundam comedy show? Like, why have they never released a slice of life anime in the Universal Century? Why do you think that is?
Probably because it would clash too directly with what Gundam is 90% of the time, which is giant robots in war battling to the death.
Yeah. That was my first thought, is maybe they don't want to, and by they, I guess we mean Sunrise. Maybe Sunrise doesn't want to damage or otherwise change the perception of the brand.
Yeah, I'm trying to visualize or think, if Gundam is World War II with giant robots, then have I seen a World War II comedy? It's almost incompatible in a way.
Right, it's hard to maintain that serious tone of like, you know, half the human population has died. Oh, but let's go over here and make some jokes, I guess.
Yeah, what are we going to do? Cut to like the bridge of Amusai, and like there's a comedian making jokes as the colony drops. You know, he's making like Australia jokes or something, or I bet they're not going to be able to jump out of the way of that. Ooh.
The dingoes ate your colony.
I guess that colony's going down under. You think we'll be able to roast some shrimps on the barbie at Sydney?
So I definitely think that's probably a concern that they would have. My answer to that would be, I mean, your brand at this point is pretty well established. I feel like if this was a new show, a new series, a new franchise, that'd be a real concern. But I mean, Gundam's been going for 40 years now. People know what Gundam is. I think you could afford to do a comedy and not really hurt yourself.
Would it be a series, though, where there's actual war? Or would it have to be a series where the Gundams aren't necessarily trying to battle to the death, even if they are in conflict?
Oh, that's a good question. So I think that would be key to navigating this perception issue, this tone issue, right? So instead of setting your comedy in the middle of the war and having, you know, mobile suits duke it out, I think you'd have to take more of like a background character approach or some sort of like very side story thing. I think I have two of those for my comedy pitches. But I think that would be how you thread that needle, so to speak, because you don't bring up the war as much in the comedy series. You just set the characters in that universe and have them do funny things that would only exist in that universe. You know, are they mobile suit mechanics in a junkyard or something like that?
Interesting, like Double Zeta.
Yeah, kind of.
Which was slapstick, but in the middle of a war.
Oh, that's true. I guess we didn't bring up Double Zeta, huh? So the first half of Double Zeta is pretty slapsticky.
Right.
I actually found some of the episodes pretty funny when I watched some of that recently. So yeah, I guess that would be another one. So Double Zeta would, but it's not the full show is not a comedy. So that's a weird one. I mean, Double Zeta is just strange in general, right? But the other thing I was thinking about, Isaac, is maybe there's never been one because anime series in general are scarce, right? I mean, we don't get a Gundam show every year, and they cost a lot of money to make.
That's very true.
And so maybe if they have the opportunity to make a series, maybe they don't want to waste the opportunity. Maybe waste isn't the right word, but maybe they don't want to use that opportunity.
Devote the resources.
Right, to a comedy when maybe they should be devoting it to like furthering the franchise with a serious show.
Right. I mean, I don't blame them either. We have to keep in mind a lot of Gundam's sustainability is based on the profits they make from selling merch.
That's right.
Things like Gunpla, things like action figures, things like shirts, etc. Do you want to buy a master grade model of a Gundam that has no weapons? Do you want a comedy Gundam from, I don't know, the time they made the Olympic Gundam series or something, and it was all a comedy about how they have to like put aside their differences or something? I don't know. For a lot of fans, the answer is going to be no. They'll instead buy the model that's, it's got guns and missiles and beam sabers and all that stuff.
Yeah, so absolutely, that was the first thing to detract on that point that I thought of. It definitely wouldn't sell as much merch because you naturally wouldn't have as much action in your show, probably, unless you set it in an alternate universe where, kind of like Build Fighters, where it's almost all in good fun. I mean, that would be one way to do it, I suppose.
Yeah, that was kind of my concept. Like, if you were signed from the get-go to create a Gundam series, that has to be a comedy. I think doing the anime trope, which is really popular lately, of saying, okay, well, they're trapped in a video game or something like that,
yeah.
would be pretty much the blank canvas you need to do your comedy.
That's similar premise to Build Divers. I don't think it's exactly the same, but I think Build Divers is, again, neither Isaac nor I have watched Build Divers, but I'm pretty sure it's like a virtual version of Build Fighters. So
okay, in that case, I was about to say, because Build Fighters is essentially, it has a foot in anime where you're trapped in a video game or playing a video game, and then the other foot's in essentially Pokemon, right?
Yeah.
They're battling it out in a tournament with their pets, or in this case, their model.
Yeah. So listeners, we want to hear, one, would you like a Gundam comedy series? And then if you did, what would you want your comedy series to be about? If Sunrise said, hey, make me a Gundam comedy, give us your Gundam comedy pitch. What universe would it be set in? Would it be an original universe, one of the existing ones? What kind of characters would be involved? What the plot would be, that kind of stuff. I'd be curious to see what the fandom's answer to this is. Because I'm going to guess, Isaac, that longtime Gundam fans would love a comedy series. Tonal confusion be damned.
I would match that and say, yes, they'd love a series, but at the same time, it's a bit of a conundrum. What would a Gundam comedy series be?
Well, I don't know. Let's find out, Isaac.
Hard to fathom.
So I believe we've both prepared at least one potential Gundam comedy idea. So
right.
What do you got, Isaac? How many do you have for us?
I just have one, and it's a bit of a cheat because I mentioned this once before, but I think it's ripe for comedy, and I think a lot of people would enjoy it visually for a number of reasons.
All right, I have two, so why don't I do one first, and then you can sandwich yours in the middle.
Do it. Sandwich me, Brian. Gundam witch me.
Isaac is probably eating a sandwich right now.
That's a lie. I'm drinking alcohol and juice.
All right, so I'll start with maybe the weaker one, or the less developed one. So my first pitch is called Anaheim Crime Time.
Oh, I love the name. I don't know what it's about. What is it? When I hear the name, I think like, what? These are the Gundams that are stopping crimes. Continue.
So Anaheim Crime Time will follow a team of mechanics that have some really mundane job at Anaheim Electronics. So whether that's like repairing GMs or like working on the assembly line, just something very boring. Like they're not on the front lines. Like they're not soldiers in either the Federation or the Zeon Army. We're basically just going to follow their, misadventures at work, kind of like The Office, but at Anaheim Electronics. And throughout the series, which I'm imagining is no more than 13 episodes. I mean, let's get real here. Maybe they will gradually uncover a conspiracy, perhaps the sharing of info between the Federation and Xeon for mobile suit development. And maybe some looming threat is coming, and they have to build some mobile suit that looks terrible from like leftover parts.
Of course.
to like, foil this big bad. But the big bad needs to end up being some very also mundane threat. I don't really know what that would be, but that would probably be the finale, is them piloting their junkyard Gundam. Kind of reminds me of that Johnny Cash song, when he builds the car. That's what these guys would be doing. And, you could have lots of bureaucracy comedy at Anaheim. Their budgets don't get approved. They have overtime problems. So yeah, that's Anaheim Crime Time. I'm thinking slice of life, mundane office work in the Universal Century with HR issues and a quirky boss. Basically the Universal Century's version of The Office, but with mobile suits and a conspiracy.
So you see it during the 1 Year War?
Yes, sorry, I should have specified that. Yeah, this would definitely take place in the 1 Year War.
Well, you kind of did. I was trying to figure. Well, Xeon was around so long. I was trying to pinpoint. All right, he said Xeon and the Federation sharing information. When exactly?
yeah, definitely during the 1 Year War for sure.
Okay, I was envisioning like, all right, maybe these guys were the jack wagons responsible for like Anaheim declining so rapidly. Like, it takes place right after the fall of Xeon, and like they're the reason.
They could be like maybe
yeah,
maybe they do something really dumb and they really like hinder the factory or something, and
the threat is really SNRI outperforming them. By being competent. Yeah, that's kind of cool. So at the end, like, is the ongoing joke that like the Gundam they're working on like always fails in the field, or like?
I think the joke would be that they think whatever this threat is like way bigger than it ends up being.
Oh, okay.
Because it has to match like their mundane job, right? Like they're not going to have a major impact on the battlefield of the war. Like I don't want them going out and destroying a bunch of Zaku's in their like crappy, essentially gym custom or something. I just want it to be something like silly. I don't know what it would be yet. Maybe they have to just move an asteroid, or I don't know, something dumb. But
okay, Shoal Zone.
They're office workers. They're not soldiers. So yeah, I mean maybe they clean up the debris, or yeah, I mean if it's in the Shoal Zone, it could be the people that have to go into the Shoal Zone and clean it up after the war. I mean like what a crappy job, right?
Yeah, if we don't stop that shoal, it's gonna cover Luna.
This would obviously be very character heavy, and could get a lot of good suit cameos.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
All right, so that's number one.
Well, my sandwich, my bologna, my PB&J idea is quite fittingly appropriate for a sandwich because it's my go-to idea, Brian, to further explore Mobile Fighter G Gundam with Mobile Fighter G Gundam Battle Feast. It's the 1 year during the Gundam tournament where the nations of the world decided that fighting, or conflict at least, or their Gundams actually, should revolve around each country's cuisine. So, going off that logic, that was the year each pilot was chosen to also have culinary skills. So they're probably mostly chefs.
Okay.
Or at least some people that are at least, very skilled at it. And the Gundams are representative of each country's food. So, there'd be Sushi Gundam for Japan, maybe Burger Gundam for the United States, things like that.
I knew it was going to be Hamburger Gundam.
I mean, all right. I was trying to think, like, should we do barbecue Gundam? That actually might be pretty cool.
Yeah.
But then again, other countries have barbecue. But actually, no. We're going to go down a little tangent for a bit. I heard the only thing in America that is actually legitimately American is barbecue. Because the hamburger was, of course, brought from Hamburg, Germany, I guess, if the name's accurate. And only Americans developed the whole, the whole, well, depending on where you go in the United States, there's a debate about what's real barbecue, right? But the whole general idea of, smoking, slow cooking meat for a long time, whether it's ribs or the whole pig or whatever, no matter how you season it, that whole style, whether it's underground or in like, iron barrels, whatever, that whole process overall is uniquely American.
Yeah, brisket Gundam.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, I don't know. It's got brisket bits or something.
I've also heard, it's sort of related, but it's not exactly the same.
Oh,
I've
good.
also heard that chili is American.
Really? Just the beans?
I believe that Texas invented chili. No, and the Texans will fight you over this. I believe they maintain that real chili does not have beans in it. So if you get chili in Texas, they're not going to give you beans.
What do they give you?
I'm pretty sure Texans say no, there's just no beans in chili. If there's beans in it, it's not really chili. I could be wrong. Someone out there who listens who's from Texas, let us know. But that's what I remember from watching the Texas challenge on Chopped or something years ago.
At the risk of dismissing our Texan listeners, I think it's pretty easy for any culture that has beans to like put a meat in there at the same time, right? That's kind of a no-brainer. You know, someone stumbled across that somewhere, right? If your culture makes soup, you ran across that at some point.
That's fair, yeah. Yeah, where do you draw the line between chili and stew? Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah. But anyways, back to my point. Yes, I feel like this series would be very much ripe for comedy because of how kind of ridiculous it is that they're, you know, using food and inside their little cockpit, their the mobile fighter trace system. They're like cooking and stuff. You know, they have conflicts related to cuisine or choices for like the menu for an upcoming battle. They're not actually eating the food. I think the food like fights each other, but it all has to have a food theme is what the countries all agreed on for that year. So it's, you know, maybe it's not a perfect setting for comedy, but I think it's suitable enough and wacky enough that it could be done well.
Well, I think that's wacky enough that you know it's a comedy on its face.
Yeah.
So wait, how does this work in terms of like the cooking? So are the chefs cooking with the mobile trace system active, which makes their Gundams cook at the same time?
I don't think it makes their Gundams cook at the same time, but I think it makes the Gundam do things.
Oh, so like the better you cook, the better your Gundam fights or something?
Something like that. Like if Sushi Gundam wanted to deploy like its sashimi attack or something, he'd be like whipping up hologram sashimi in his cockpit. And then like they'd launch out and it'd be all dramatic and stuff. And, you know, they'd attack Vodka Gundam. And, you know, Vodka Gundam wouldn't know what to do and like, you know, start pounding down some more vodka to like not feel damage or something like that. There's lots of ways you could go with this.
Yeah.
And I feel like what's unique about it, and maybe something that Mobile Fighter G Gundam didn't completely nail, was depending on where you are in the world, you probably really disagreed with what your Gundam choice was, right? You're like, what? That's our Gundam? That doesn't represent us at all. But with your cuisine, your country's cuisine, I feel like everybody would be almost immediately kind of rooting for the home team.
So how did you feel about Tequila Gundam?
I think this might be a case where Tequila Gundam comes back.
Oh, that's a good point. Maybe he's like a veteran.
This time it's more Tequila Gundam though. like you know, the other time it had like a sombrero and like kind of cactus spikes. This time they went full tequila. But I mean, the name of your Gundam isn't solely what your Gundam looks like. You know, like don't be surprised if Tequila Gundam also has like tacos on it or burrito or a bean burrito or something like that.
Hold on, did you just say a beam burrito? Because that has to be his finishing maneuver.
A beam burrito, Brian.
That is amazing.
Just like we saw the master cloth, there's a beam burrito. Okay, a beam tortilla. Have you ever seen a Gundam wrapped in a beam into a beam burrito? It can be done. It's very damaging to your opponent.
I would greenlight the show just for the beam burrito.
See, this stuff writes itself.
It does.
All right.
It does.
And longtime fans, I think, will really enjoy something that not only is mixing cuisine, but also just the sheer wackiness and comedy of, you know, the fate of the leadership of the world being devolved around food fights, essentially.
Yeah, and it does really write itself because, you know, cuisines are so recognizable, right? So, you know, if you go to... And I don't want to stereotype all the countries of the world here, but you know, if you go to the UK, you can get your fish and chips, your bangers and mash, right?
Yeah, it writes itself. Also, what's interesting is if you get a country that's, you know, not too many people are familiar with, it'd be kind of interesting to see what their food's like. You could even have the characters, I don't know whether this is from the eyes of Sushi Gundam or I don't know, Barbecue Gundam. Maybe they're not even too familiar with it. You know, they're like, oh, we'll be facing Mozambique in the next fight. Like, Mozambique, what do they cook? We have no, you know, information to build a strategy around.
Yeah, it could end up being very educational, right?
Yeah, really. They're like, oh, we should have known they would have used a saffron attack. Of course they have saffron. Like, they destroyed our sensor.
Like, oh, the cumin, it's too strong.
You're going to have to recycle your power. It's being drained by the nutmeg.
whoever uses cinnamon, that could be like a finishing maneuver, like the
Oh,
cinnamon
wow.
challenge. The people who try to
Yeah.
eat like whatever it is, 3 teaspoons of cinnamon at once, and you just can't do it.
Yeah, what country's known for cinnamon? I don't know. But yeah, see, lots of options, lots of ways of going about it. And I guess in some ways it's by default very respectful of each country because we're really just pulling your food that exists. We're not trying to assign you something that maybe you disagree with. Like windmill Gundam, I'm sure in Sweden, I'm pretty sure it was Sweden, right?
No, I think it would have been Netherlands.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm sure in their long history, maybe they weren't too happy to have Windmill Gundam as their sole representative. Or maybe they were. I don't know. But there must be more intimidating forces or, a persona to field.
I guess G Gundam was a little bit before Google, but yeah,
Yeah.
Windmill Gundam definitely seems like something you would just type in, Netherlands, and maybe the first
Right.
image that pops up was a windmill, so you were like, boom, Windmill Gundam.
Right. As for like an overall enemy, I'm not sure. Would there be no enemy, and it's really just about the conflict between the players, or should we sort of give a bit of a replay for the Dark Gundam, and the enemy's like a foodborne illness virus or something that slowly spreading?
Yeah, or you could do something like maybe the enemy is just the tournament itself. Maybe it's run by nefarious people who are trying to sabotage it or something. I don't know that you need the Dark Gundam again. That might be a little too far away from food,
Yeah.
but
The enemy is Big Food, which is trying to corporatize the Gundam fight.
it's Monsanto.
The heroes are fighting against it. Yeah. So that wraps up my my idea. Give me the bun, the last piece of bread, the bottom layer, Brian, to this Gundam comedy idea sandwich.
All right, I'm going to finish the sandwich. So this one, I don't have a great name for it. So right now it's just called Propaganda 0079. And it needs a better title. So this series is actually inspired by MS Igloo, which we just watched.
Oh.
So this series would follow both the Federation and the Xeon propaganda teams behind those chibi propaganda videos from MS Igloo. So if you remember, Isaac, in MS Igloo episode 3 of the first trilogy,
I remember.
there was 2 propaganda videos, one from Xeon touting the Zuda and how it was better than the Zaku and it was going to help them win the war, and it was hilarious. And then minutes later, the Federation retaliated with its own propaganda video making fun of the Zuda, which was basically the universal century equivalent of a meme war. So I envision this series following the writing and animators behind those propaganda videos. And we'd have 2 main characters, one character on each of the teams. Like maybe they join each propaganda team at the beginning of the war. And then we just follow the teams throughout the war as they trade barbs and insults in the public sphere via these propaganda videos. I don't imagine either team being portrayed as evil per se. Rather, it's just 2 groups of very determined cartoonists / writers arguing about taste and wit and trying to basically dunk on the enemy in the form of jokes. The battles are essentially replaced by who can score bigger laughs with their videos, which could be measured based on public opinion polls, right? I mean, the internet surely exists to some degree in the universal century, so they could put out the videos and then there could be likes and dislikes, and there'd be instant feedback to see who won that video. A subplot could be like Anaheim is leaking info to both of them, and then maybe the teams get upset and maybe they unite to take down Anaheim Electronics from a public opinion perspective. And I was trying to think of a finale that would mirror the death of Lala in some mundane way that would relate to their careers. Maybe there's a shared love interest between the 2 teams. Obviously the stand-in for Lala,
like a celebrity or something.
I don't know, I'm not sure, but it's something. And maybe she goes out on a limb for them or something, and instead of dying, her career just ends up dying instead, or her career gets killed, and maybe she can't get a job anymore for either side. And then at the very end, if we fast forwarded a little bit to the Laz fleet crisis, you could have the teams kind of split up a little bit. Some of the Federation team could join the Aug and Karaba and some would join the Titans, and then some of the Zeon people, they would obviously need to be disbanded. So some of them would join the AUG or Kuraba, and some of them maybe they would join the Titans. So then you could have like a sequel where maybe the teams are a little bit mixed up. And then the best part about this, Isaac, is you can sell Gunpla for this show, because the Gunpla would be a line of SD-styled Gundams based on the propaganda videos that you show throughout the show.
That's pretty funny.
And I don't know. I really liked those chibi shorts in MS Igloo. I thought they were hilarious. It would be a good way to like backdoor bring back SD Gundam.
I like it. Also, I mean, what was great about the little chibi propaganda videos was that they came out of nowhere, right? We didn't expect them at all in MSG. Like, we thought it might be like a boring news announcer or something like that.
Right.
But I'm envisioning like the artists, maybe like there's one on each side, and they never really meet each other or even aware of like the other one's name, but they're sort of dueling.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Each episode, like
totally.
Each one's on like their tablet, and like they're like sweating and drawing and stuff, and like getting really hyped into it and like saying stuff, like I'll show you or something like that.
Exactly.
And then, like the animation can dive into their tablet what they're animating, and then that can almost be like battle scenes or funny comic scenes of like they drew the chibi Gundam like tripping or something like that, or losing its cockpit, or I don't know. They make fun of different things like that, like Matilda dying or something. So. Yeah,
it's basically artists dueling within the public sphere through their work. You could have very quirky artists, very quirky writers. They could be very obsessive, right? Because artists are oftentimes interesting people. It would be a fun show. Again, no longer than 13 episodes. You could even do it shorter than that. I think it would be a good way to bring back SD Gundam in a comedy way.
I like it. They're brought back, but at the same time, it's like we don't have to deal with the actual SD Gundams walking around, and we have to take them seriously.
Yeah, and it's fresh. It's interesting you bring up about how we didn't expect it to be a chibi, funny propaganda video in MS Igloo. That's actually why it worked so well. The way the characters reacted, you could tell this was just part of the universe. That was just how it is. Right away, I went along with it. I was like, oh, okay, that's what they do. Like, this is funny, and it makes sense.
Do you envision like it ending with one team capitulating? Like, does the Zeon animation team end up going into hiding or something? Or is it just kind of like, we lost. I guess we'll slowly transition to doing like Republic of Side 3, animated videos or something like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, they would have to be disbanded, right? I think that's where you have the sequel opportunity, because maybe this young guy loses and he's forced out, and obviously he's dejected. But maybe the Federation guy, maybe he joins the AUG, and maybe he leaves. He doesn't want to join the Titans. And what does the AUG and Kuraba need against the Titans? They need public opinion on their side. So maybe the main Federation guy reaches out to the Zeon guy, and he's like, together we can turn the tide of this war.
That's pretty cool. I thought you were going to say like, oh, he decides to go back and like with his experience, he's going to teach at Zeon University. And after a while, he starts hearing a lot of his students talking about Neo Zeon. And he's like, what's that? And then that's what it ends on. Like, dun, 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 dot, 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 Neo Zeon. I bet they're going to need an animator. So I would be surprised if we see a Gundam comedy coming down the pipeline, but with all the Gundam content coming out and how well it's been doing, and sort of its second wind, really, it's hopefully the start of a long, successful run in this century. I think it's now outside the realm of possibility that we won't see a series, at least, that's clearly leaning more towards being comedy.
Yeah, absolutely, especially with so many different forms of media available now. I mean, you've got short form content. You could put shorts on Twitter, on YouTube. If they don't make a full-on comedy series, which they probably won't, they would probably test the waters somewhere if they were going to do this. It definitely wouldn't surprise me if in the next 5 years they put out some SD or otherwise comedy-based show in like short form, like on YouTube or something. Like that would be the way to do it, I think, Isaac, right? I mean, maybe don't commit to like a full 26 episode show, but maybe put it out in bite-sized pieces see if people like it.
Yeah, hopefully we get one maybe as an interruption of all the great conflict-based series that are coming out now that we know that they're going to be filling in the gaps leading up to Crossbone Vanguard and F91. So I'd really be down to see the Gundam dueling animation wars, and also the Gundam Battle Feast also.
Maybe that's how you do it. You pull a Pixar, you insert a short before each of the films, and maybe they all connect. Maybe, I think people would like that. I think people would get a kick out of that.
Yeah, and then they'll say, okay, well, we need something for the UC Century. Why don't we do that comedy series about the group of engineers?
Or just full-on Battle Feast, baby.
Yeah, just serve it up.
Bring that barbecue.
Appetizers.
So those are our ideas, listeners. We want to hear what your ideas are for your original Gundam comedy series, and just in general, like, is a Gundam comedy series something that you want? Maybe Sunrise doesn't even know if there's demand for this, but I'd be curious. I think people would watch it. People love comedy. I like to laugh, don't you, Isaac? And we all need to laugh coming out of COVID here.
I laugh every time a ball gets destroyed during the 1 year war, Brian.
Is it like an "I told you so" laugh, or just you're just laughing at their inferiority?
It's both. It's you see what happens. You see what happens when you fight Zeon.
Yeah. If they were in the superior Ogos.
Absolutely. I mean, the Ogos. It's got all kinds of weapons strapped to it, doesn't it?
It does. Do you? So you laugh when a ball gets destroyed, but do you cry when an Ogo gets destroyed?
No. You know why? Because nobody cries for the brave souls that died for Space Noid independence. We only cheer and ask that more people sacrifice themselves for Zeon. Hail Zeon.
Those poor sons of Zeon.
And daughters. And daughters.
So let us know your thoughts, listeners. Isaac, take us away.
Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and tonight, before you go to bed, stand next to your bed, get on your knees, put your hands together, look up at the ceiling, and hail Zeon.
Good night, everybody.